Hello and welcome back to Let the Stone Speak. I'm Brent Nagtegaal. Thanks very much for joining me. I just got done interviewing Dr. Tzilla Eshel from the University of Haifa. She works in the School of Archaeology of Maritime Cultures as well as the Zinman Institute of Archaeology there in Haifa. She also works at el-Ahwat, a site that is in the north and central highlands. She's been excavating there for a couple of years. Added to that, she did a study on metal items there that were found previously. And this is a site that dates back to the Iron One period, the late Iron One period, it seems. And so she just put out a paper alongside others entitled First Evidence of Bronze Production in the Iron Age 1 Southern Levant, a direct link to the Arabah copper polity. Now, if all that sounds like a bit of a mouthful, it's a really interesting study as to the copper production that was taking place, bronze production that was taking place at this site where you wouldn't expect it typically to happen, where you have copper coming from far away in the Arabah Valley, south of the Dead Sea, tin coming from we don't really know exactly where, and they were actually making the bronze there on site, and then going ahead and making bronze items as well. And so the dating of this site still up for debate, but very interesting. Dates to the window of time where the period where the Bible describes King David being in power over a united monarchy, that the Bible would put it stretching this far north into this area of where the site was located. I'm going to let Dr. Eshel speak to what she thinks about that during this interview as well. But still, there's this fascinating information coming out of Israel regarding archaeology and specifically this metallurgy area of interest. I would also like to mention, if you like our content, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. And then also you can request our 40-page magazine that comes out 6 times per year on biblical archaeology. This is free. We'll send it to you wherever you are in the world. You simply have to renew every year if you would like to keep on receiving it. And if you'd like to receive a subscription, go to armstronginstitute.org, scroll down and you'll find a place to sign up, or you can send emails to letters@armstronginstitute.org and I'll make sure you get a copy. Now to the interview. Dr. Tzilla Eshel, thank you very much for coming on our show.
My pleasure.
So congratulations on your excavations and this recent paper that was published in PLOS One. I'd like to talk about that with you today. First of all, just a bit of your archaeological background and as well as your period or your area of focus and study.
So I have a BA in computer science and I didn't like it. I was bored. And I decided that I want to do something that interests me, and I went to study archaeology. I did my master's and my PhD in archaeology at the University of Haifa, and Naamai from the Hebrew University, which you probably know, was one of my supervisors, together with Professor Elif Gilboa and Professor Yigal from the Hebrew University. And I've been working in the past few years quite intensively on silver boards. From different aspects, the aspect of provenance, but not only provenance, trade routes, the use of silver as money, pre-coinage money, and other aspects as well. And from there, I got quite accidentally to the very interesting site of el-Ahwat. Just because someone brought to me, he knew I was a metallurgist. I was still a PhD student, actually. Dr. Shaiba brought to me a box of metals and said, look, we found these metals. Adam Zertal excavated el-Ahwat, and he probably mislocated or something the metals, which are all in this box. When I opened the box and I saw the box, I said, wow, this is something extraordinary and it's worth a study.
Absolutely. And I've actually went back and read a few papers by you. I read the one in the Tel Aviv Journal in 2023, the metal assemblage of Iron Age el-Ahwat as well, and then just to see what had changed between that paper and the latest one as well, where you take a more singular focus towards the production at this site. So this is just with Adam Zertal. He excavated this site first, did he? And then he kept back. I guess it's just he died, unfortunately, too soon before he could publish everything. And then I guess it was Shaiba that wanted to come through and look at those excavations and brought you in because of your expertise in metallurgy.
Yeah, I think actually the box was just lost or something because he was cleaning up. The Adam Zotal excavated 8 seasons at el-Ahwat, and he published a
Mm.
very nice final publication, excavation report, which not many archaeologists do. And although he passed away, unfortunately, 10 years ago, he had time to publish this final excavation, but I'm guessing he mislocated the metals because they were never published. And so when Shai was cleaning up the storerooms, he found the metals.
Well, this is fortuitous. This is, in some ways, it's pretty amazing since, as we'll get to, the excavations, Fainan area, Timna area, developed over the past 20 years, but increasingly in Timna in the past 10 years. And this is, you bring this information to bear in your paper in an amazing way. I'd like to talk about that now. So, first of all, where is the site located geographically in terms of the general dating of the site as well as established before you started working? And then let's get into what is so significant about what you discovered in terms of copper production, bronze production, sorry.
Okay, so this site is located today near a small settlement named Katzil. It's in the Menashe Council restriction area, and it's located in an area with beautiful view. We have a beautiful view when we're excavating. We see all of the valley below us, all the way to the sea. And actually, we're in a aerial distance quite close to Megiddo, but
Mm-hmm.
Megiddo is down in the valley, and we're up in the hills in the Central Hill Country, and we're excavating there, and you can't miss the view that the people there must have had. They must have seen what's going in the valley, and they had some connection to the valley because when you read Adam Zertal's excavation report, you see they were eating fish from the Nile, and there were a lot of glyptics found in the site, so they had connection to what's going on in the valley. They had connection to the trade route,
Mm-hmm.
but they were distant from this trade route. They were sitting up on the mountain. So that's from the question of location.
So, in case people are not too familiar, you have the main trade route that runs through across the Carmel Ridge here, and through it, Megiddo occupies the overlook as the entrance to the Jezreel Valley, and then you're kind of halfway along through the valley up to Megiddo, but a little bit off the trade route, as you're saying. So they're not on the direct road.
Yeah, the trade route is probably going from Dor, which was a
Mm-hmm.
big hub port in this period, all the way to through the Jezreel Valley to Megiddo. And if you want to get to el-Ahwat, you have to leave this route and go up the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an aerial distance very close. Today, if you want to drive it from the Wadi Ara road, if you want to drive it, it's a 5-10 minute drive. It's very, very close,
Mm-hmm.
but it's up the
Okay.
mountain.
So you find this box of items. You start to study them in general classification study of what was there, and then as far as your latest paper goes, this kind of led you down this track to look at the bronze items, I guess, that were found there. So what can you tell us about the bronze working that was done at the site?
So you asked me, I forgot to answer your previous question. You asked me about the periods on the site. So
Yes.
what's special about the site, in order to answer about the bronze, I'll explain this first. The special thing about the site is that it's not a tell, okay? It doesn't have many strata one over the other. It's basically a short-lived site from the early Iron Age, covered with something from the Roman period, which is arguable. Adam Zartal called it an agricultural layer because we see it now as we excavate too, because we came back to the site to excavate it in the past 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
We see two layers. We see a thick, very hard layer of earth, and below it are the like the remnants of the Iron Age settlement. which are not left very high up. You see the walls, it's always only the base of the walls. And the Roman period, they probably took it to build terraces and watchtowers and things like that, which we found. So it's an agricultural land in the Roman period, and under it an early Iron Age settlement. Now, the exact date within the early Iron Age is debated. Adam Zotal pushed it back to the late Bronze Age. He took it to the 13th century BC, and we think it's a bit later. It's probably 200 years later. It's the 11th century BC, and I don't think you want me to go into the reasons why each one dated it.
I think we'll get there.
Okay.
But I think the better way to approach it would be just to jump into the bronze now.
Okay, so that's basically the two periods on the site. And what we found is a lot of metal finds, artifacts, beautiful earrings, arrowheads, toggle pins. What else do we have there? All kinds of drill heads and things like that. Needles. We have quite a few needles. We even have a set of tweezers. So a lot of tools and artifacts. And we found in the box by Adam Zotal, before we went back to excavate, something like 10 or more pieces of copper and bronze, which were not artifacts. They look more like something that has to do with industry. So we decided to study these artifacts. We took them to the lab. We looked at them under the microscope and under a SEM microscope, which gives you much larger focus and chemical composition within the artifact. And we could actually see a lot. We got a lot of information from these what I call metal spills. One of them is probably an ingot because it's quite big and thick. But all the other spills are, first of all, they look like industrial production because they're not clean copper. They have a lot of residue from the production. We see slag adhered to these spills, so they're not clean copper. And some of them are copper, and some of them are bronze. So we understand that there's not one thing going on here. And we found one piece, this not we found, yes, Adam Zotal found one piece of slag. Actually, it's a small piece of slag, something like that. When we looked into this slag, we found tin prills. What are tin prills? They look under the microscope as circles, which are very, very rich with tin, like 80% tin within the slag. And these are indications of bronze production. Because there are actually two things that could have been on this site. It could have been recycling, people taking bronze, heating it up, and producing again bronze from the bronze they had. But then you won't get tin prills because there's no way you can produce 80% tin from recycling. If you found tin prills, it means you're producing bronze. You're taking copper, you're taking tin, and you're mixing them together to produce a new metal called bronze, which is much stronger than copper. Copper is quite a soft metal. If you produce bronze, then you can make weapons, you can make tools, you can make things that you didn't have before.
So this is sorry, go ahead.
Now we know there is in the early Iron Age, there's metal production of this kind across various sites in the southern Levant, not only in el-Ahwat. El-Ahwat is not unique in that, but what is unique is that we find these pieces of metal. Usually, people don't leave around such precious metal. They produce tools, and we find the tools or the jewelry or things like that. We don't find the spills of the metal. They're too worth to just throw away. But for some reason, at el-Ahwat, they were left behind, and because we found them, we could understand what people were doing, which is something that could not have been done in other sites. Because in other sites, if you look at the literature, you see there's evidence of bronze working, and we don't know if it's bronze recycling or bronze production. And it's always described as a very small scale production, at household scale. This is not the case at el-Ahwat. This is large scale, a lot of copper, a lot of tin, large scale production of bronze.
So you call your paper, you say the first evidence of bronze production in the Iron Age 1 southern Levant. So what you're saying is, while this probably took place in other sites, you don't have evidence for it yet. This whole idea of procuring copper, procuring tin, bringing them to a site, and actually doing the making of bronze. What does that say, I guess, about not necessarily the people, well, the people that live there, the abilities of the people, networks, that they can be doing this on in such a location?
So imagine, first of all, let's zoom out from el-Ahwat. Imagine that this evidence suggests that this is probably the case not only at el-Ahwat. It
Mm-hmm.
means that we have a network of sites that are producing bronze. That's what I assume. It
Mm-hmm.
has not been proved before, but that's what I assume, that el-Ahwat is only the first, but it's not the only one. And that in the southern Levant, in the early Iron Age, was like a bronze producing empire.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it was something every tell or every settlement that respects itself had a bronze production on site. We find it in Megiddo, we find it in Edom, we find it all over the place. They were all producing bronze. That's what I assume. And I don't think that it was a small scale production. I think it was an organized industry. And then we have to ask ourselves, okay, these are assumptions. Okay, this is where I take my finds. It's important
Mm-hmm.
for me to say that this is where I take my finds. I take what I know about el-Ahwat and I assume, and this is something that has to be tested and has to be studied, but I suggest to look at it in this way, okay, to change the view that we look at things. And if this will indeed be true, it means that there's something very organized going on, that it's not each town for itself. Megiddo for itself had a metalsmith that was fixing your broken needles. No, it means that there was some kind of organized industry in which copper was coming all the way from the Arabah to these sites up in the north, and that this some kind of social organization was producing bronze. And then we can ask ourselves, where was this bronze going to? Who was using this bronze? Where was the tin coming from? Who was organizing this? What was the relationship between the bronze producing sites and the copper producing sites in the Arava? All these are new questions to ask based on this evidence.
And I think this is where your paper really does take it to another level, um, to find the origin of the copper, and not as being as general as the Wadi Araba, but or just saying Fainan or just saying Timna, but you were able to separate, based on what you found, that the copper came from both. It came from both Timna and Fainan, two sites that are separated by over 100 kilometers. That Erez Ben Yosef from Tel Aviv University, who excavates down there, has said that around the turn of the millennium, you have a single polity or single authority overseeing both of these sites. And you're saying from around that same time period is when copper is finding its way to your site to be produced into bronze. How did you do that? How were you able to say that the copper came from both of those locations?
So in 2023, Michael Baudet from Germany, from the Bergbaum Museum, published a very long and very methodological paper in which he looks, dwells into the differences between Timna and Feinan in metallurgy. He
Mm-hmm.
takes finds of copper from Timna and Feinan. He has a very big, and it's not only him, okay, it's him and co-authors. They have a very big database of metals from Timna and metals from Feinan. And they look into the metallurgy, they look into the chemistry, they look into the isotopes, and they manage to trace differences between, which has not been done before, differences between Timna and Feinan very nicely. Basically, mostly based on metallurgy and on the chemical composition of the copper in trace elements. And when we look at our finds he looked at Timna and Finan separately. When we look at our finds in el-Ahwat, we see both. We see both some copper with characteristics of Timna, and some of them of Finan.
So, does this help you? I guess if we can go delve specifically more into the dating of the site, Zertal, you said, which is just interesting. I mean, he pushed it. He thought it was more late bronze, perhaps. And just thinking of the dating of both Timna and Fainan, they were both dated at different times from what the consensus is now. That would push it more to the end of Iron One, start of Iron 2A. The fact that you have copper from both these sites at your site, does that help you in? Is that one of the determining factors for your dating?
Look, because the dating of Finan is arguable, I wouldn't use el-Ahwat, which is not securely dated, to date. I wouldn't go that way. I would say let's first date el-Ahwat in a good way, in a secure way, which this is something we didn't do yet. And this is one of the aims of our excavation is to have a secure date of el-Ahwat. It's a problem across the Central Hill country in the southern Levant. Most sites in the Central Hill country are not properly dated with carbon-14, and we don't have a very precise timeline of the early Iron Age in the Central Hill country. So within the early Iron Age, if it's 12th century or the 11th century or the 10th century, today we basically depend on pottery for dating.
Just hearing what you're saying about the site, how it's not a regular tell, it does remind me of Kibbutz Haifa in the Shfela in the south between Philistine and Israelite or Judean territory. They have largely a single period site where you have occupy probably a really similar window of time, at least from what you're saying. They dated it eventually from 1020 to 980 based on the carbon dating. And then I think they have a slight Persian Hellenistic layer. And you have a layer that's somewhere in there from the Iron Age and then a later Roman period. I'm just thinking now as you're talking that perhaps you have the opportunity at your site to do something similar to like what Caiapha did, was help to define even the pottery based on the carbon dates.
We don't have carbon dates yet, so we'll need carbon date. Adam Zartal had 4 olive pits carbon dated. They have a very general date within the early Iron Age, but they can indicate the second half of the early Iron Age. But they're all from the same pit, and I wouldn't date the entire site based on these. So we're hoping to have more carbon-14 dates.
So this site's on the highlands. They get the copper from the south. Where do they get the tin from? Do you have an idea or a concept of where they're getting the tin from?
So the question of the origin of tin is a very debated question in metallurgy, accurate metallurgy at all. We don't have a system to, or at least an agreed system to find the origin of tin as we have for copper. And there are different opinions. We know there's also the sources of tin are much more limited than those of copper. So we know there's tin in all the way in Eastern Asia and I don't know, Afghanistan and other areas. We have tin there, and we know and some scholars argue that there's tin in Anatolia. Others disagree, and we know there's a lot of tin in Britain. So and a few smaller, of course, in Europe there are a few smaller also tin ores, but there are different opinions which of these tin ores were being used in which periods. There is an opinion suggesting that in the late Bronze Age, this is based on tin ingots from the late Bronze Age found here in the Carmel coast, that tin was coming all the way from Britain from Cornwall in as early as the late Bronze Age. Now, not everyone agrees with that, and it seems to me also we don't have any other evidence of anything coming from that far from the West Mediterranean in the late Bronze Age. So I would take it with caution. And another thing we know is that in the early Iron Age, maritime trade is very low. Okay. It's only starting to wake up in the second part of the early Iron Age. We have a lot of maritime activity going out in the late Bronze Age, and then we have kind of a collapse of these maritime trade routes, and then a very slow revival. And at the beginning, if we look at the pottery in Tel Dor, we see it coming only like a very short circuit of Egypt, Cyprus, and the Levant, and that's about it, and nothing further than that. So I don't think tin was coming from the west in the early Iron Age. I would suggest it's probably something more in the east or in Anatolia, but I don't know, and we don't have a method to know that.
I just like to I've got a quote here from Erez Ben Yosef, just taking it back to el-Ahwat, and this gets more into, the difficult question in archaeology is to try and give a political or ethnic affiliation to people occupying a certain town. He said this. He said the study proves that copper and tin were allied to produce bronze locally in ancient Israel at this early date. He added that a well-established Israelite kingdom did exist in the 10th century, and in light of this geographical location, el-Ahwat belonged to it. That is just like increasingly, I think Erez is going to more of a position that would be largely reflected in the biblical text, that around the 10th century, start of the 10th century, even a little bit before, you have David, and then Solomon thereafter him. It's the same time that his mines, the mine in Timnah and Fainan, are working together, indicating a singular polity. Where do you stand on this? I'd like you to speak to yourself from both what you can say dogmatically and then more where your opinion is going based on what you're discovering.
Okay, so I always tell people less less exclamation marks and more question marks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very careful talking about ethnicity at el-Ahwat or at all. It's very, very hard to say something about ethnicity. Everyone wants to know ethnicity, but how can I prove it? It's very, very tricky. Even if I talk about an entity producing a bronze producing entity, then what, Megiddo was part of this early Israelite kingdom. Dor was part of this early Israelite kingdom. Dor was Phoenician. Megiddo was Canaanite. So talking about the kingdom of Israel that was producing bronze based only on el-Ahwat, it's very problematic to say, because we find this evidence in other sites as well. So there was some kind of organization going on, but I don't like to give it names. Because actually it's funny, because I know Erez very well, and not like him, I am religious, and I grew up in a religious family, and I went to religious schools, and I go to synagogue, and I told him, you sound sometimes more religious than me, because because I come from this background, I'm very careful not to excavate with the Bible, and I love the Bible, and I think it's an amazing book, but I'm very careful not to excavate with the Bible in my hand, and I want to see what the site gives me and what the finds give me, and I come from the science, and then and I take it as far as I can from the story, but I'm careful not to take it one step too far, because then I think it's first of all disputable, and I'm looking for the exact word, but it's not science anymore. Maybe I can say.
So just put ethnicity to the side for a second. I was up at Abba Bet Macha interviewing Naama recently, and she also put it to the side for a bit and said, well, it's very hard to show ethnicity. However, you can show, as you've done, the actual links of whoever the entity is there. And she puts it in terms of who they're paying their taxes to. Okay, they might be a different ethnicity, but they're obviously part of some conglomeration. And so is there a way that you would see at helping determine that aspect of it rather than the type of people that were there, like the ethnicity?
I'll tell you what questions I would ask. Okay, I would ask, what is the relation between the people sitting at el-Ahwat to the people sitting at Timna and Fenan?
Mm-hmm.
Were they part of the same organization or social organization? Were they buying their copper from Timna and Fenan, and were they a separate organization? These are the questions I would ask. And if you're talking about who they were paying taxes to and who they were delivering this copper and bronze to. So based on these questions, you can try to say something about the identity of the people sitting on the site. And I think that studying el-Ahwat alone for these questions is not enough. But we have to go back to other sites and ask these questions, and then we have a larger picture to point. So we're only at the beginning of this study of these questions. We're just opening up the questions that can be asked to give us more information about these entities or polities or organizations.
Something said you said earlier is very interesting. It's this concept of the fact that these people, they receive the copper, which was produced down in the Arabah Valley, and they could have had a decision at that point to just ship the straight up copper to different places, but instead it seems that they took the enterprise to its fullness, meaning that they were the ones that then procured the tin, and they did the hard work, the hard scientific work, or the hard, sophisticated work of the time to produce the bronze. Similar to something like, we might mine the materials, but then we send all the materials to China, and then we buy up the goods from China and bring them back to us and pay a certain fee for it. But they didn't do that, is it seems like what you're saying.
It's what I'm suggesting, and I'll tell you why I suggest it. Because when I looked at Adam Ziltaz's box, it was just 10 or 9 artifacts. But since we came back to el-Ahwat and we're excavating, this is, till now, I only published, it takes time to publish papers.
Absolutely.
I only published what Adam found. But ever since we're excavating in the past 2 years, 2004, and we just finished the 2005 season, we find more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not only these few artifacts, it's all around the site. So it's something of large scale. That's what I think. And at least for el-Ahwat, I think it's a large scale production. And this is more than just something small and local.
So fascinating. One final question that I'd like to, it's not actually in your study necessarily, unless there's something you want else to add, I'll give you the opportunity.
Well, we didn't talk about the debate of el-Ahwat, and el-Ahwat used to be called the city of the Shardana, which is something I don't think is valid anymore. It has to do with how archaeologists excavated 20 years ago, and we're looking for the Shardana, and today this is the narrative changed totally. So this is one of the reasons I think Adam was pushing the site back to the late Bronze Age. He thought the sea people were coming to el-Ahwat and affiliated to that. But I think el-Ahwat is a very interesting story in itself without being the city of the Shardana.
I think it's fascinating. Of course, we just had a massive exhibit here in Oklahoma with the Tel Dan Stele and stuff from Timnah, Jerusalem, Caiaphas. So we're focusing mainly on the early 10th century, and this period of that the Bible would put King David in the late 11th, early 10th century. So we're really kind of trying to bring to bear everything that we have, be it affiliated with David or not, at least from this time period. And at least in that sense, the things that you're finding at your site would relate inside this window of time, at least if I'm interpreting it correctly. One final thing I'd like to talk about is the silver that you find there, since you're so interested in silver and where the silver came from. I believe you did a paper, I'm thinking off the top of my head now, about the provenance of the silver from Dor, from the early Iron Age. And yet, do you find a difference from the source of the silver that you find at the site compared to the slightly later hoard that you found in Dor?
Look, in Israel, there are 40 silver hoards from different periods.
Mm-hmm.
So there's silver for a long time. And what's nice about silver that you can provenance it, just like copper, and it's never local because we don't have local silver ores. So it always comes from afar, and it's always an interesting story about long trade, a long distance maritime trade.
Hmm.
The silver from Dor is coming all the way from Sardinia and from
Hmm.
Anatolia, and it's the mid 10th century, second half of the 10th century. It's already the Iron Age 2A, and what we have beforehand in the early Iron Age is that we have quite a lot of hoards, but they're all mixed. I call it debasement because I don't want to call it forgery. I don't know what they were thinking, but it's debased. The silver is mixed with copper, repeatedly, horde after horde. We've had like 6 or 7 hordes. Every one of them has silver mixed with copper. That's what they were doing. They had a lot of copper coming from the Arabah in the early Iron Age.
Hmm.
They didn't have that much silver, and they continued using silver as their means of exchange and payment. So they just debased it with copper, and that's a very, very interesting phenomenon of the early Iron Age. And this can also, be related to, were they regulating this debasement? Did everyone know that silver was debased? Was that like the new silver was now silver copper alloy, agreed by
Hmm.
everyone? It's a very interesting question to ask about silver and its relation to copper.
Fascinating. We're going to look forward to your next papers. Not pushing you, but some of the items that you're talking about coming out of Iron One el-Ahwat that you're finding in your last 2 seasons. You said you just returned back from the field with your team. Is these excavations that are going on every summer now, late summer, or how do you see that process continuing?
So we hope to excavate at least 2 more seasons. As I said, it's not a tear; it's quite a one strata,
Hmm.
and most of the site was excavated by Adam. But we were lucky and there's a lot of also bedrock which we reach in a few probes we had. But we were lucky to find an area that Adam did not excavate, and we're getting down now, hopefully by next year, to the floors, and we could say we will be able to date these structures and say something about the Iron Age in the site, to have a more precise dating, to say something about I don't know, about the relation of the walls. Was this site surrounded by walls? Yes or no? That's an ongoing debate about el-Ahwat. So we hope to resolve some of these questions in the next 2 upcoming seasons, and if not, then we will continue.
And this is a really big question because the architecture that you have there would be a little bit different from what we see on the highlands from Iron One unwalled villages. Correct?
Everything is different. Also, the metals. If you read the papers from 20 years ago about the Central Hill country, they'll write there are no metals. This is a society that was metalless. They were using only stone tools. And
Hmm.
suddenly you find a site on the hill country full of metals. So that's one big difference. They say the people in the Central Hill country were not trading with the valley. That's not true. They were trading with the valley. We have Egyptian finds. We have fish bones. We have metals coming from all over, so they were definitely trading. And they say they had no walls and they had no structures, built structure. So is this true? This is an ongoing debate, because what happened with the walls is that Professor Israel Finkelstein, who's today the head of the School of Archaeology and Maritime Cultures in Haifa after he retired from Tel Aviv, he visited the site and he wrote a paper about, he called it el-Ahwat, a fortified city, question mark. And he claimed that the walls are Roman period. So one of the things that we are doing is dating the walls.
Hmm.
We're dating them using OSL technology, which dates the last step time that these walls saw, the inside of the walls actually saw sunlight.
Hmm.
So we're dating these walls, and actually from the first season, we already see that there's not one answer to this question, because the top of the wall is Roman and the bottom of the wall is Iron Age. So everything is complicated, but we hope to sample a bit more and say something also about the walls.
Well, I think you do have just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful opportunity here. The site is so unique that you have such a large gap between the Iron One culture and then the Roman period, and so even if there is a debate, it's going to be one or the other. And so without that nuance of Iron 2A, Iron 2B, Syrian destruction, you're actually going to find this nice little window of time that you probably could be able to conclusively date as time goes forward. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's nice. I'll just say one more thing about about the Egyptians in el-Ahwat. We have a lot of Egyptian finds. We have a lot of scarabs at el-Ahwat. And this, if you want to ask about the relation to the ores and the involvement of the Egyptians in the copper production, this raises a question. If you want to say something about who the people who were sitting there and who sent them, or at least who were involved in this, it has to do something with Egypt. That's my clue, my hunch.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your work. Thanks for doing the hard science. I know that sometimes, you find a glittery object or a piece of jewelry and it's fun to publish, but then going into provenance
is much more fun. Is much more fun.
Yeah, well, I'm glad the right people are doing it then. If you think that's fun, and we definitely benefit from your passion for this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your good questions. And have everyone a Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Dr. Tzilla Eshel for that interview. She comes from the School of Archaeology and Maritime Cultures at Haifa University, as well as the Zinman Institute of Archaeology there. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel if you enjoy this content and you don't want to miss a thing. And then also, if you like the written word more than audio or visual, or if you like them both, don't forget to sign up for our magazine. This is entitled Let the Stone Speak as well. It comes out 6 times per year, and we'll send it wherever you are in the world absolutely free. Simply go to armstronginstitute.org and sign up there, or write an email to letters@armstronginstitute.org. Thanks very much for being with me.